You've heard the word hysterectomy. Did you know that the root of that word, hysteria, is a Greek word meaning uterus? And in ancient times, a hysterectomy was done to cure a woman's hysteria.
Today we're going to talk about the history of that word and how it was used as a diagnosis for women that were probably perimenopausal. Even not menopausal, but perimenopausal.
Welcome to This is Menopause, where together we explore the marvelous and yes, sometimes treacherous journey of menopause and that mysterious detour perimenopause. We're here to rewrite these chapters to change her story.
So let's speak to a little bit about the history. So what have you read as far as how that word came to be and how they came to think, okay, this is the treatment for this uterus?
Yes. So perimenopause is not only confusing today, it's been the source of lots of chaos in women's lives throughout history. The fact that some reports describe hysteria as a sad womb, and recommendations were made for more sex as a cure. Can you imagine?
No.
Yeah.
And they already had like 12 babies.
And they were doing their own laundry, hanging it up outside, just hand doing laundry, hanging it up. And then someone was describing their hysteria source as their uterus, and it was sad and needed more sex. Yeah.
Wow.
Unimaginable.
Wow. You know, even as recent as when I was in residency, we talked about this. We talked about hysterectomy may cure all her emotional ability. You know, probably more so with PCOS patients, but probably what we were thinking was more PCOS patients was perimenopausal patients because they were still having periods. So even as recent as 25 years ago, we were still thinking kind of along this same path, that knowing there was something different about this phase of life, but just labeling it as, we're just kind of kooky women, that we're hormonal, we have a hormone imbalance, but now we have a word for that hormone, we understand it better.
So, in 1963, the definition of hysteria was a syndrome which starts early in life, mainly affecting females, with recurrent symptoms of many organ systems. Symptoms like pains of all kinds, menstrual disorders, anxiety symptoms, an excess of hospitalizations and operations, as well as attention-getting and manipulative behavior.
Oh, wow.
1963.
That was pretty recent, too.
Yeah. And the 63 paper describes a study done in the 40s where the mean age of diagnosis of women was age 37, which is perimenopausal age. These women were probably still having the periods, and that confuses doctors today much less.
Absolutely.
Back then.
Even OBGYNs are still confused about that. Even people in our specialty are still confused about that.
Because we were trained, if a woman is having regular periods, her symptoms, other than PMS or migraines, maybe, are not hormonal.
Which is not true. Like, I remember being taught the term hormonal imbalance is not real.
Yep.
So don't use that term. It's not real. It doesn't make any sense. When you taught your patients, tell your patients there's not an imbalance, because they didn't want to explain this roller coaster that actually gets more deep and more pronounced in the late 30s throughout the 40s as any different than a woman in her 20s. But there's a huge difference because your ovaries become less efficient. So but that's as recent as when I trained. So I'm so happy that we're getting this movement where people are not only recognizing menopause, but perimenopause.
Absolutely.
As a process that can really, really affect women and how we relate to our family, our spouses, our friends, at work. I mean, it's a real deal, but it's not hysteria.
Right.
It's not hysteria.
But when I think I would have been hysterical back 100 years ago,
Can you
if I was
imagine?
feeling this way and someone were labeling that as if it were all in my head,
And telling you to have more sex because that would fix it.
because you had a sad womb. I think I just, when I put myself into those women's shoes, it really isn't. I don't think I would have coped very well. They had more functional coping.
Yeah, well, that's true. They had to. They
Yeah.
had to. They were tough. They were tough.
They were. So even today, the diagnosis of perimenopause is difficult to make because oftentimes women have had an ablation. They may have already had a hysterectomy, but have ovaries that still are there, or they might have a long history of metabolic disease, PCOS, that have led to irregular periods. So if a woman has a uterus, that is still functioning without an ablation, and her periods have been regular throughout her whole life. It's a little easier to make the diagnosis, but even I had a patient last week, she's 33 years old, still having regular periods, but having a significant amount of symptoms. And when I did her blood work, the subtleties that I see with a really high estrogen level and an elevated FSH level was consistent with perimenopause in a 33-year-old.
Right, but you weren't taught that in training.
No. That has come from a quarter of a century of practice and interest in menopausal and perimenopausal care.
And trying to figure out the why.
Right.
Why did my patients feel this way? And even why did I feel this way when I was in that age group? Because unfortunately, there just was not a good understanding of it.
And so many people in society tell women it is all in their head, and I think oftentimes those women start believing it.
Oh,
they start believing
it's crazy. So once you feel crazy inside, and somebody tells you you're crazy, well, then you're like, okay, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I do need antidepressants. And also, too, I think our lives are so busy, and we delay childbearing now into our 30s, and so we have young children when all this starts, because it typically starts in your late 30s. Or that's what I told my patients, that you can start to feel some of those symptoms. But so we have these young children, we're trying to work, we're career moms, some of us, not all of us, but even the ones that are stay-home moms. You have these children, our children are involved in so many things, and we're running crazy, we don't get enough sleep, we wake up feeling tired because we haven't rested well, and you put all that life stress on top of this, the way our bodies are made, and it can be really, really, really overwhelming.
Absolutely. When I think about women historically going through this without support or medical knowledge, it makes me really wonder how different world history would look if we had figured this out long before now.
Oh, absolutely.
We still have a long way to go, but we have had significant progress since our generation of doctors have been out practicing.
Yeah, even probably in the last 10 years when we started using some compounded medications to try for the nuances of this, because it's a very difficult thing to treat. It's very difficult to manage. So now we're talking about it, everybody's aware of it, that's a real thing, but we're still scratching our head a little bit about how do you manage it, especially the patients.
How do you diagnose it and manage it?
Especially the ones that's still having periods. Because it's difficult. It's not an easy fix.
Right. And it's multifactorial. And it doesn't take one visit to a doctor once and you get a fix.
Not even 2 or 3.
Bingo. It is an ongoing, and so it takes time to prioritize that for a woman. And she deems that she doesn't have enough time to take care of herself because she's chasing everybody's home.
Yeah. Which makes everything that they're feeling worse. And I tell patients, don't underestimate your stressors at home and your lack of sleep. Or your disrupted sleep, because sleep plays such a big part in the way we feel every day. And when you rest well, you feel well. And so you start out behind the 8 ball, and then you've got this crazy life, and then your hormones are doing this because your ovaries are not nearly as efficient as they used to be. You're where it's coming from. I mean, is it coming this way? Is it coming that way? What's going on with me? Why do I feel this way? And their husbands and partners, I think, are kind of like, they still think maybe she needs some hormones or something, because they feel it affects your whole family. Your kids feel it because you're on edge. Your husband, your partner feels it. So it's a very difficult thing to manage. And like you said, you just don't go to the doctor one time and get a prescription for it. It's not like managing your diabetes, your high blood pressure. It's it's way more complex than that.
It's probably even more than we think about how often we need to get an oil change on our car. You got to continuously be checking in.
Yeah, and rechecking the things that are also contributing to that, not just the fluctuations that your body's doing like this, but also, what can I do to manage my home life or my work life or my my family life to make this phase in life not so hard.
Yes. So society does not prioritize sleep and restorative time at all. I mean, we have constant stimuli on our phone, Netflix binges, and I also think oftentimes women feel like the only alone time they get is at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night when everybody's asleep.
Absolutely.
So they're up, regrouping, but they need to be resting,
right?
So that their body can recover and function at its best. So, I mean, that's just one of the components. The other is alcohol.
Yeah, that's a big one.
When we don't feel good and we're so stressed with taking care of kids, getting together with our girlfriends for a glass of wine is a place of support.
It's a reprieve from your home.
But oftentimes the alcohol is contributed to the sleep disruption as well as their body's not metabolizing alcohol very well.
Exactly. And you know, a lot of my patients have said, well, I drink a glass of wine to go to sleep. I'm like, okay, that's probably makes you a little sleepy, but that's the worst thing you could do for sleep.
Because they're going to wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to sleep.
Even their sleep that they do get is not good sleep. You know, your stages of sleep changes when you drink alcohol. So you don't get as much deep sleep, and that's why you wake up so easily. Your sleep is so disturbed, and that's a big no-no. And they're at a phase in their life where they can do that because the kids aren't toddlers. They're pre-adolescents, adolescents, or teenagers, so they can be left, on their own. Well, I'm going to go meet my girlfriends for a little bit, which is great. But if you put more than one glass of wine in there, or even just sometimes one glass of wine, depending on how you metabolize alcohol, or if you drink white or red or whatever you choose, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Human connection is so important. It's actually an important part of healthy living and aging well. But when we combine that with other things that aren't helpful, we're kind of ourselves.
And that's the culture around here. I mean, the coastal lifestyle is let's go have a glass of wine, let's go have a cocktail.
Yeah,
that's just kind of where we live. Yeah.
When movement, using that to go for a walk with your group of friends would be a really good. You can connect. And when your body is moving, it improves metabolic health, cognitive health. It helps.
Yeah, you metabolize your supper that you ate or your dinner that you ate more better.
Yeah. So I think the last point is that perimenopause is more challenging for most women than postmenopause.
Absolutely.
Because postmenopause is the absence of production of estrogen from the ovary. It's gone. So there's not a roller coaster day to day or week to week. It's done. So their body certainly doesn't feel the way it did before. But at least day to day, they're not trying to walk this tightrope in the middle of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and I usually, that's a really good point, and I think we focus so much on the menopause or the menopause transition, and that we have forgotten to understand or realize that once we get through the transition, it's much easier to treat. Right. That's why I even know, even personally, I felt like once I got past that place to a menopausal place, and I was on my hormones and steady, that there's just, I don't feel those bouts of, extremes. Yeah, extremes. The mood lability, so to speak. So follow along with us for more information about all these things, and our next webinar will be posted soon, so there should be notes below this podcast about how to do that.
Get on the wait list. And remember, you are not hysterical. You are not going crazy.
You're not going crazy.